From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
Welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So today's special because I get to bring on a friend of mine here from Nashville who's not only in the real estate business, but he started throwing his own events, and he's somebody that is making a big impact. But what I'll tell you is the most important, you want to tune in, he wants to make an even bigger impact. And so I love dreamers. I love people that think bigger about where they are and where they could be and the impact they can make. So the impact effect, you're going to hear about that today in some of the conferences there. I want you to take out a pen and paper because some of the things we're going to share with you, not only going to talk about the journey, what's required to get to success, what success looks like for you, and more importantly, guys, we're going to have fun. It's going to be a good conversation. It's going to help you move the ball down the field. So my good friend Jim Morris is joining us. Let's go.
Let's go. Thank you for having me, Brian. I'm excited today. Excited to talk to your listeners and just engage in an amazing conversation as always with you, brother.
We're going to have fun. So I got to give you props because when you reached out to me over a year ago or so, we had a mutual friend and all this. We kind of knew each other, and I applaud you because a lot of people I find, they don't even reach out to people, right? And we're in the same city. You're in real estate. I'm doing mortgage. You're doing conferences. We have all this overlap and all that. Talk to me a little bit about your approach to that, about building relationships, because I know you've built this cool community, but a lot of people are like, hey, Jim, Brian, I want to meet cool people. I want to meet people that can help me in my journey. How does that start? How do you approach that?
Well, I think it starts with the why behind it. Why do you want to connect with that person? How do you provide value? And how do you utilize some relationships to potentially get the back and forth conversation, right? I think it's just like sales, except what we're doing is we're selling human capital, not monetary capital.
Yeah.
And that human capital, to me, is actually worth way more. So how do I look at it from a position of how can I help you? How can you help me? And how can I just be real and raw that this is about relationships? We don't have to tie money to it. We don't have to tie opportunity that's related to business to it. It's really just a connection of human beings.
Yeah.
And how can we have a deeper, higher level conversation to show where I'm at in life, to understand where you're at in life, and build that connection? And I think that's the problem with a lot of relationships is, and you've probably heard me say it before, is like cotton candy conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How can you build a relationship and feed off of it and show your commitment, show your intelligence, and have it be a back and forth without actually going a little bit deep and asking meaningful questions to build a meaningful relationship?
Sounds simple, but we all know people don't do that, right? And how many times, I mean, we were laughing earlier, you open up Instagram and everybody, hey, I got a proposition for you. Hey, I got a proposal for you. Hey, I got an idea for you on this and all that. And it's like, that is not the way to come in and add value. I heard someone say the other day, you and I might have talked about this too, is, you've got typically highly successful people that folks want to connect with, and they're like, hey, how can I add value to you? So now you're putting the work on the person that you want to be with. Talk to me about that, of how you add value. You've been able to build relationships with some ultra high performers, people that I admire and we both look up to.
Of course.
How do you start to build those relationships early on and find ways to add value?
Well, I think most people are in a situation where they're receiving a lot of inbound, right? Because you want to connect with them, you want to build a relationship with them for probably a reason that may benefit you. So I think for me is really trying to understand how can I be different and come at it from an angle that shows love and care. And I believe that love is the unifying bond and the reason why we're here on earth. So if I lead with love, if I lead with serving, if I lead with potentially seeking how I can be beneficial to you, in hopes that relationship will be made. And I think when you talk and ask questions and utilize curiosity, it allows you to build that relationship through asking questions. And that's why I kind of related it back to sales for monetary capital gain, where this is human capital, but it's similar because, as you know, a discovery call relates to curiosity in sales. And in a relationship, it's just me really caring. Like, I actually care what you're up to, and I actually care how you want to make an impact on this world. And if I can understand that, then I can strategically start to enterprise and figure out what resources I have that can help that or help you accomplish that. And I think by leading for what's beneficial to you and figuring out how I can be of service to you will ultimately come back to me in one way, shape, or form. But I think going into it without the expectation that it needs to come back or it should come back really is the differentiator, I think, in building those meaningful relationships.
Dude, I love that. I love what you said there too, is not having the expectation. Like if your intention is truly to be curious, if your intention is to love on somebody and give them, whatever gifts, whatever service, whatever you can provide, that's not like, hey, I need to do this for you and expecting something in return. I love that, because too often people will get upset and they're like, well, I did this for you, I didn't get anything back. It's not how the world works, especially in the higher successful world, as you know.
Totally.
So we got to jump into your mastermind, because I'm fascinated by this. There's a lot of masterminds popping up every day. I feel like they're everywhere, right? Like I've been in a few myself. I'm still in a few, but I feel like every few months, maybe every quarter, there's like, oh, there's another mastermind. There's another mastermind and all that. Talk to me about, one, the importance of masterminds in your brain. Like, why do those even exist today? Because I think there's a lot of people that have never been exposed to them. Yeah. Never gone. You got another camp that probably are in multiple masterminds and on the other end of the spectrum to try to help them as they go. But why are masterminds important? Why did you even get involved in those and start your own?
Yeah, so community. I want to give people the opportunity to grow together and also rise up. And I believe that in that process of growth and boldness and bravery, it's really hard and difficult. And if you don't have a community to lean on or someone that's there fighting the fight with you, it's really hard to navigate entrepreneurship and to create big goals and actually obtain them. Like the biggest thing I learned from Impact Effect 23, the conference that I threw, was this was never about me. And in order to accomplish the large goals that I've set, I need help. Mm-hmm. And for me, the way I grew up, it was very independent and family life and relationships and more leaning on friends. And what I realized through that process was that's actually put me in a position where I thought being independent was the right way to go. And I do believe there is a big piece where you need to be independent in your life. But the reality is I can't make the impact I want and service and help the amount of people I want without help from others. Mm-hmm. So to bring it back to the Impact Effect Mastermind, it's just a great group of people that are seeking the same goals. They're in somewhat of the same level as far as revenue and business goes. And my whole thing and how I throw my events and my masterminds is I want to disrupt the industry. I've been to conferences and events. I've been to masterminds. I've spent lots and lots of money. I've learned great things from them, but I've also found certain things that I think can be enhanced so the outcome is increased and the probability of success after attending one of these is much higher. And I think how we operate the mastermind is very different. It's an interview, almost like a podcast with me and a special guest. And we allow the attendees to submit questions to me. And I formulate the questions, create concept around them, and navigate a conversation. So it's not someone coming in and promoting their book because that's important to them. It's not someone coming in and talking about financial literacy when this is business growth and strategic sales and marketing tactics, right? Yeah. So I think by me having control over the special guest by conducting an interview style conversation allows me to actually give the folks in the group what they're seeking. Mm-hmm. And then also we do a hot seat at the end and we open up for questions so that way people can further the growth and learning. And we announce who's speaking ahead of time. That was always something that was like last minute in a lot of my masterminds, and it never allowed me to prepare. And it never allowed me to think critically prior to actually going into that hour and a half Zoom. So it was really reactive for me, and I want to be super proactive, and I want to give people the opportunity to spend time and think through, okay, Tim Story is going to be here on the opening. What would I ask him? Mm-hmm. What has Tim accomplished? Who can Tim connect me with? And I think that's the big piece too. My good friend Nick Cavuto, him and I were chatting the other day right before the launch, and he was like, you know what, Jim, people came to that mastermind because of you. But the reality is they will stay because the people in the group. And that really hit me, because the reality is it's not about me. I'm a conduit.
Yeah.
I'm a conduit to bring great people together and leverage the relationships that I've built to hopefully enhance their progress and progression.
Yeah, and I love that.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
So you're curating the group. I love that piece. You're really interviewing people in a different style, because a lot of masterminds, there's, hey, pay to be in here, you can be there. Some are more curated that I know. Talk me through who's the right candidate for a mastermind. So somebody's listening to this, so like, man, I love what you guys are talking about. I'd like to be around high performers too. Who should be in a mastermind? And then after that, we'll talk about who shouldn't be.
Well, I think it's just like anything. You need to dedicate time and commitment to it, and you need to understand that this mastermind works through meaningful relationships. Yeah. So for example, we started it off and we had everybody tell what their business was and what's a resource that they've come across in the last couple of weeks. Well, what that led to was multiple meetings the next day amongst folks outside of the mastermind. And I think that's really important. So to your question of who should be in it, I think it's someone who's seeking education and knowledge, but someone who really understands they're going to get all of that through meaningful relationships.
Oh, man. Well, and that's it, because how many people just go on and they want more information, and they don't look any different than 3 years ago, 5 years ago, any of that. And I love that you were very specific about what have you learned in the last couple of weeks. You know, we were talking at lunch today. We were planning out some things for 2024 with Britt and I, and we were talking about some of the AI video editing. And okay, what can we do there? Because that now is brand new, and it's gotten to a level where we could actually program in, not only save money, save time, and improve the quality. And so we're always coming up with ideas. These are things you can't get, I think, outside of a mastermind or a group that you're talking about it. So I want to go back. We know who should be in it. Who are the people, maybe they're listening, let's be real. It's not for everybody, right? Who are the people that you just say, hey, you know what, before you spend that money, before you invest that time, this may not be a fit for you if this.
I think for me, it's someone who's not going to actually take action.
Oh, come on. Tell me that never happens. That never happens.
Everybody does everything they're going to say in this world. We know that. But seriously, you know, through that vetting process, there's an application, and then they pay, and then I do a one-on-one before I let them into the group. And that one-on-one is very key. Yeah. There is some coaching in it. There's some consultation about their business, because the questions I ask talk about revenue, marketing, what's worked, what hasn't. We kind of go through that series. So there's opportunities where I can consult my expertise or advise from a strategy standpoint. But in that conversation, it's really important to understand what your goals are and what are you going to do over the next 10 weeks in this first session. Because that's how I kind of split it up. It's 10 weeks, 10 weeks. And it will roll throughout the year, but I want to give open enrollment opportunity, because here's the unique thing. I limit it to 20 people. And the reason why I limit it to 20 people is because of the impact. Mm-hmm. I've been on masterminds where I spent $20,000 and there's 156 people on it, and I attended every week for 11 months and never got the opportunity to have a question answered.
Wow.
So that's why I want to disrupt and curate and create, so I don't build something and put people in a position where they have felt how I've felt in the past in a mastermind.
I love that that's the way you created this, because that's the beauty of it, is you've been a part of enough to go, okay, in a way you've shopped your competitors, right? As I always say. And you figure, okay, this didn't really feel good to me. There's probably a group out there like me
Yeah.
That they want to experience this that's there. And so I'd love for you to talk about this for people that, I hear this quite often, people that want to throw events. They want to create a mastermind or community, and they have good intentions to do it. But one, they're either super fearful, or two, they really don't understand the process to do it. What are some things you wish you had known before you'd started?
It's a great question.
Impact Effect.
I am fearful. That's just me being real and raw. We launched the mastermind last week, and you can ask my wife. I was nervous, man.
I remember the videos and things. Yeah.
I care.
Yeah.
So what she said is utilize that energy in a positive way, right? And that's why my wife is so amazing, because she could take the outside perspective and dwindle it down. But I think for me, it's really the fact of understanding that this is not for you. And when you remove yourself out of that situation, I think it removes a lot of the anxiety. And one of the clients that I was consulting with recently was saying that he didn't feel like he belonged on LinkedIn, and was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should be on it, and this, that, and the other thing. And what I said was, you are missing the opportunity to enhance other people's lives, and they want you on LinkedIn to enhance their lives. So remove you out of that situation because you're fearful and you're scared and you're anxious, and realize that it's not about you. There's people on there that don't even know you exist that need you. Mm-hmm. And once you spin the mindset around that, then it just kind of flows into where a little bit of that pressure comes off, right? I'm not going to sit here and say it's a miracle and you're like, "Ooh, let's go. I'm good." But it removes that pressure, I believe. And I believe it removes that pressure because it's not centered about you. It's not what you look like. It's not you have a zit or a cut, or you didn't shave, or your hair didn't get done right before. Because when you start thinking about that stuff, you're realizing that that's all, you're doing that for your benefit. Now, of course, you want to shower and you want to look good and get a haircut and be your best self, but I would encourage you to always be your best self.
Yeah. I love that too, because I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, but I want to dive into that further, because I think there's this dichotomy that exists of people start these a lot of times because they want to build their personal brand. People start these because they want to grow their business. There's all these reasons, and they're real reasons, because how else would you go do this? Like, yes, the impact matters, but people are like, man, this is also a way for me to grow and to do all this stuff. How do you blend those together?
Dude, I'm so glad you are asking me this question, Brian. This was a journey for Jim Morris, this exact question. When I started planning this, it was all about me. I'm happy to say it on camera because you need to hear this. I did it that way. The first month, it was all about Jim. How's Jim going to sell more real estate? How's Jim going to pick up consulting clients? How's Jim going to be the coolest dude ever who throws conferences, and it's so much better than everybody else? And I did that for about 30 days. And I woke up and was like, what am I doing? This does not align with Jim Morris's core values. This does not. It doesn't align with who I am as a person. And I was in that for 30 days, and it didn't feel good. And my content for sure showed it. And I was wondering why. I was putting out all this content, and I'm like, I'm not getting all the response I typically get. And the reality was because I had the wrong mindset about all of it, and it showed in everything I did. Everything I did. And I don't know how I snapped out of it. I can't say, I had a conversation with someone, because I didn't. The person I was conversing with was actually telling me to do it, so it was all about me, all about my brand, and all about my benefit. So the person that I was engaging with was the one pushing me that way. And I just kind of snapped out of it. I'm like, this isn't me. This is not aligned with my core values. And I made a promise to myself that I would not do anything that doesn't align with my core values. And I made that promise a year ago. So immediately I started stumbling over my own feet the first 30 days, and I had to snap out of it. And I think for me, the biggest learning curve from that was realizing that I really need to understand what my beliefs are. And when my beliefs aren't intact, I need to pivot immediately, and I need to be very honest and aware of the reality behind it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I did it. So, it started out all about gym and all about money and all about the things that don't align with my core beliefs.
Yeah.
And I bounced out of it, and then it just started rolling, man. And once I made that pivot and put it in my head that this is not about me, this is about helping entrepreneurs, reducing the fact that it takes 3.8 businesses for most entrepreneurs to be successful. 56% of entrepreneurs fail within the first year, right? Like, that's why I'm doing this, because I want to enhance those numbers, or I misspoke. I want to reduce those numbers because those aren't positive numbers, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the journey that I was on, and I'm continuing to learn. And quite honestly, you know, at the conference, I took it a little bit overboard for not positioning myself. And I'll give you an example. I didn't set up the conference well to sell the mastermind. And at our conference, we did not let people offer from stage. That was one thing I just didn't want to do. I didn't want it to be a sales pitch. And I understand why people do that, and I would throw an event like that. This just wasn't that one. But what I realized was through that process, I was so it's about everybody else that I didn't sell the product that would help pay for the conference at the conference.
Yeah.
Luckily, due to building the right brand, doing this right for the 9-10 months after making the switch, it allowed me to build the meaningful relationships, and I filled it within a couple days after.
That's awesome.
So it worked out, but I think there needs to be a good blend, because you are putting all the work. You do have to take care of yourself. You do have a family. You do have financial responsibilities. So I think there's a way to massage the two, and that was my learning process through all of it.
I love that you shared that too, because a lot of people probably struggle with the same thing, and they're going to go back and forth. They're like, I need to promote myself, but not so much. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less as you go through. And the lessons you learn too as you go back, you did almost have to begin with the end in mind, in a way of like, why am I going through this? But how do I get there, and how do I serve the people? You're very clear on who you serve, which I think is important. I love the 20 piece. And I'd love for you to expand on this too, is you do the event, you got people signing up over here now. So you're kind of moving in what I would say is like this next stage of you're creating the mastermind community. Where does your attention shift to now? Because yes, you've thrown a conference, but now you've got a community you got to take care of, these 20 people. How does your head shift through that new world?
For me, I mean, I'm already planning next year's conference. I've already got a virtual summit that we'll be chatting about probably, that I'm planning. So for me, I want to give opportunity to the people who are committed to the brand and to the others in the mastermind. So for me, the shift has been, all right, I've got these 20 people. What can I do for them? How can I leverage? How can I be enterprising? Who can I introduce them to? Oh, you want to speak? I throw events. Let's figure out how we can get you on stage. You know, and there's got to be some criteria to that, but there's also an opportunity to say, hey, maybe you're not ready. Let me coach you. And I won't kill you. You don't have to pay me thousands of dollars. You're in my community. Let's do this the right way. So I think for me, now that I have a community that's 3,000, and then dwindle it down to a smaller group of 20, I can really take care of that group. Whereas with the 3,000 people in the bigger community, there's not that interconnectivity and deep relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's what's missing, a lot of them.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
Well, I love that you mentioned the word consulting, because obviously, as a real estate agent and professional there, you got to consult over here. How do you blend these two together? Because let's call it what it is. You've got a lot of people out there. They're like, man, I want to go do coaching. I want to do consulting. I want to go create a course. But I'm a full-time mortgage professional. I'm a full-time realtor. Whatever they're doing today, and you're doing both. I think this is one of the most challenging ways for people to probably look at it's either or. And you've kind of done this both and. So I'd love for you to expand on that.
It's hard, and it's a lot of dedication and time. But again, I can't do it alone. So it's utilizing resources and help and having a team. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of late nights. You know, I closed a house right before this, had meetings. I've got to go to another investment property after this. but I had to carve out time because, one, I always have amazing conversations with you, but two, this is the other part of building the brand and building the consultation and being a strategist. So for me, it's really, really, really getting concrete on where my time's spent. And, you know, with a 1-year-old and a new marriage, that's a big piece of it. And quite honestly, after our last lunch, that was a really eye-opening meeting for me, because you are that, man. Like you are doing all of it. You're in both lanes. And you said to me during that lunch that you can't talk about how important family time is if you're not at home with family doing the right things with them. So I think it's really difficult to balance it all, but you've got to be extremely strategic in what matters and what aligns with your goals and your core beliefs. I have said no to meetings more than I ever have in my entire life the last 3 months, and that was really hard for me because I want to help people and I love people and I can help them and I can connect them. But what I'm realizing and you asked me originally about how I make relationships with some of these higher profile people, is it needs to be for the right reason, and it needs to be an exchange of love or value or connecting. It can't be this one-to-one type of approach. So I think overall, to answer your question, is you've got to be very strategic in your time and very strategic in what you do, and if it aligns with those core values. And for me, that's really hard because I came from a time in my life where I was helping a lot of people, and now, unfortunately, I can't do that because there's responsibilities that matter a little bit more to me than the random person who's just trying to get. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what equates up to some of those larger folks, right? It's like they're in that same situation and probably have 100 million more things than I have to do today.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
There was a podcast the other day, Ed Milet was talking about the 1,000+ text messages he had, I think, by the middle of the day. And you start to realize, man, I thought I got a lot of text messages. And then you realize, like, everybody's got a lot on their plate. But I love what you said there, too. It's like, once you start living it and you design your life, that's when it starts to be intentional. And I'm always about, like, tactical application. So, like, how do you design your weeks? Because I'm always curious. I learned something years ago that I might share, but I'm curious, how do you design your week so you ensure you're where you need to be?
Can I ask you a quick question first? Yeah. How do you respond to folks that you may not answer? So like Jim Morris hits you up, texts you, calls you, you don't answer, and then they start questioning you why you're not answering. How do you respond to that? Do you move on from it? I'm in a world right now where I'm seeing a lot of that, and I don't know how to necessarily navigate it because I am getting a lot of text messages and calls, and I want to help, but I can't, and people are getting frustrated.
Yeah. So I'll share with you what a mentor shared with me, and it actually helped change the whole perspective. You got 3 circles. You start with the closest, those people in your corner. That's like your wife, parents, siblings, people that are just like tight. Like you would call them in an emergency. You would call them if something to celebrate a win. Like they're in the corner with you. They know all the intimate details. They're the closest ones, right? Yeah. You move out of there, and what I learned is there's probably only about 4 or 5 people that make it in the circle, if we're real. You move outside of that corner, you get into the circle, the next group. And for some of us, we can manage 10 people. Some of us can manage 20 people in that group. That's probably about it. Those are people that you call, you text, probably on a weekly or every other week basis. So you're in each other's lives.
Yep.
But if they didn't call you back within a day or 2, you wouldn't be offended by them because you'd know that they were busy and they would respect you in the same. So you have that understanding of these people that are in my circle are also busy. We have the same expectations of we'll get back to each other, but not that quick sometimes, right? Because we're all busy.
Because life happens.
So I started thinking about, okay, who's in there? I started plotting people in a way. Then I realized outside of that's the community. You have 3,000 people, right? And I've worked in companies that have all of those. And the reality is some of them will not get the fast response. Some of them will not get a response sometimes at all because it depends on what do they want. And I've found that if people always call me because they want something, then I'm setting a boundary by not responding.
Yep.
And that was hard because people pleaser, I want to respond to everybody. I thought my value was, I'm going to get back to them. I'm going to help them. I want to help everybody that reaches out. Well, if you were to go through your DMs today, you'd probably have people that want to reach out. They have no connection to you. They weren't referred to you by anybody. And I look at it as there's not really a responsibility to respond to those people because they're not in one of those groups for me today.
Makes sense.
And if I talk to them, I would just let them know, hey, one of my core values is getting back to people timely, but you just happen to not be in one of those groups, and I have to ensure I have time for those people. Because if I ever let down my corner and my circle, I lose relationships, and I'm not willing to do that. If you're in my community, you just got to understand, like, that's just a little bit further out.
Yep.
And so what I've also shared with people too, tactically, is we set up a Calendly link. And I've gone from 30 minutes to 15. And it's been very eye-opening how many people respect that and how many don't. And I always let people know at the end of it, thank you for respecting the 15 minutes. I'll set up another call with you.
Yep.
If they don't respect the first 15 minutes, I'm usually stopping them close to it and letting them know, hey, we're at the 15 minutes here. Hey, let's connect up sometime in the future. So I'm setting a boundary and an expectation for the future. So that's just some practical, but also like.
I started the 15-minute Calendly.
Think about it.
And I'll buffer in Calendly an extra 15. But I control the schedule, and I can control if I want to go 15 more or if I want to cut it short. And sometimes, right, like it could be a great conversation, but I just have something I need to do in that 15. But I've tried to buffer it so that way I do have those opportunities. Thank you for sharing that, man. That was very helpful for me.
Well, it's some tactics. I always talk about, like, people can talk these big ideas and all these things. This is like literally, if you plot these things out, it's very eye-opening. And I would tell you too, when I started to value my time more, other people started to value my time more. And so I'll give you the last little hack that's worked phenomenal. For Nicole and I, on Sunday nights, we go through the kids' schedules because 3 kids going all different. You've got one-year-old. Wait till you have more. And
yeah.
Where are they going? We have to plot that first. And for us is getting their schedules, and that's a priority for me. And especially in this season, I'm protecting that with a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 8-year-old, all that stuff going on. And then I move in and say, okay, now here's some things I have going on at the office. Here's somewhere I need to be this week. Hey, I need to have a late dinner over here, or I'm traveling at this. And so we plot all those out. That open communication, I think people run from it. Mm-hmm. And that's where, obviously, being married and having kids, like, you've got to go into it.
We do an accountability meeting on Sunday where we go over just everything: family, marriage, date nights, finances, and work or wealth is the last one.
Love it.
And it allows us to align on a weekly basis for the following week. And I mean, it can be even stuff like, you know, my wife's like, oh, it's stressing me out. We don't have all the dinner plans scheduled, right? And it's like we're spending time on that, but it's important to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it reduces stress. It's open communication. And some people think like, oh, an accountability meeting, you're going to go over like the finances and the mortgage. We don't really talk about money in those meetings. It's really more of what do we need to do? How are you doing? Hey, we're definitely keeping the date night. Do we got the babysitter? Who's watching the dog? Right? We go through all of that life stuff.
Yeah.
And then the work stuff is last, which I just think is amazing because with 3 kids like yourself, Brian, and all your speaking and traveling and what you do, like, it's impressive. And it's impressive that you hold that standard and responsibility to your wife to align your weeks and have that commitment on a Sunday night, man. It's impressive.
So I want to add this and then get your perspective to this too. Is the only reason I'm able to do that, one, is phenomenal supportive wife. 2, I've surrounded myself with people that are doing this at a higher level than I am and that have done it for years. And so I've asked them, how do you do this? How do you go speak here? How do you go travel? Like, what do you do with this? And even I've taken our daughter to one of my speaking events before, right? And so they said, well, you take your kids with you sometimes. I'm like, I never thought of that. When you ask people that are further down the road than you, they'll give you things you go, I can do that. And so I would tell people is make sure that relationship at home is right. Then 2, seek advice and help, which is why your community exists. So as you look to move forward, I know you're doing consulting. You've got real estate and things. You probably started planning out 2024. I'd love to drop some insights into this because we're doing something in a couple of weeks to help people. But I feel like, again, inundated of info. Like, there's all these planners. There's all these people telling you how to plan your best 2024 and all this stuff. How do you approach a new year and really ensure that you've designed a year that you actually want to live?
Yeah. The first thing I do is I create a word that defines my year. That word is created with my wife. This is not a Jim Morris decides it, and it's business related only. My word, our word for 2023 was bigger. Jim Morris is going to play bigger. Caitlin Morris is going to play bigger. Our word for 2024 is stronger.
Ooh.
So we played big. We took a lot of risk, and there was a lot of losses this year, right? And you can define a loss any way you want, but for me, it's something that I knew I had potential capacity to get here, and maybe I got here. That's a loss for me because I know I'm good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But through that, when you play bigger, you're going to experience that. And now that I have a year under my belt of playing at such a higher level, now I need to be stronger in that level. And so that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is figure out, how do I want to spend my time? Right? Like, you know this, speaking takes a lot of time. To go travel to LA, to fly in, to get to the hotel, to do the night before dinner, to prep, to speak, to do that night out with people after, to then fly home. I mean, it could be 3-4 days where you're locked in. So for me, it's defining how many of those speaking engagements do I want to do? How many podcasts do I want to get on in 2024? How do I want to spend my time strategically, and who do I want to spend it around? And I think for you, Brian, like on the webinar that you did a couple weeks ago, and you were talking about like, you know, people that you want to get in front of and build relationships, and how you're building that through engagement and communication and digitally and things like that. That went on my list after that webinar that you did. Was what's my top 25 of people that I will get on a stage with, or I will do business with, or I will create a friendship. And the friendship is actually first.
Love that.
So that's kind of how I look at 2024 is, where do I want to be? How am I going to get there? And what needs to take place? What process, what lead measures to make it happen?
Yeah.
And I think everybody plans, but I think that first step is really defining, like, how are you going to sum up your 2024 before it even happens? And for me, I'm going to be much stronger than 2023.
The only way to get stronger, we know, you got to go through some resilience. You got to have some obstacles. You got to have some challenges. And I love, like, bigger probably gave you some expertise and some insight into, okay, we need to get stronger in these areas as you go through. And so I love that, because a lot of people, you know, the stats just don't lie. You know, let's be real. A lot of people will start something with good intentions and they fall off. We've talked about those cycles that are there.
Yeah.
How do you stay consistent? You know, you've got your one word, which I love. I do something very similar to that. But people fall off. They don't stay consistent. How do you ensure you're staying on the right road?
I will publicly tell people what I'm doing, because I do believe my word is bond.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest pet peeve I have is someone saying that they're going to do something and they don't do it. Because when you say you're going to do something, there's other people that you're affecting by making that statement. And when you don't do that, you affect others. It's not even just about you. So for me, I publicly will say it. You just heard me say I'm throwing a virtual summit. I defined last night that I was throwing a virtual summit at 6 p.m. smoking a cigar. And I'm here publicly on a highly rated Brian Covey podcast that is going to be heard by so many people. I'm publicly saying it because now I'm going to go do it, and I'm going to stay consistent because my word is bond.
Mm-hmm. I love that you know that about yourself too, because some people that's a fearful, but I'm the same way of, like, when I say I'm going to go do something, or I've often found too, when someone puts a challenge out there, you know, whether it's like a workout or, hey, you're going to do a TEDx talk, and like, do you think you could ever do that? That'd be really hard to do. I'm like, oh, a challenge. Oh, I like those. So once you know who you are, and I've learned that just listening in our previous conversations, but today too, you get a lot of clarity as you move forward, but you also are moving before you're ready in some things too. So I want people not to miss that.
Messy action rather than regret.
Yes.
I live my life. And it hurts sometimes, guys and gals. It hurts. It hurts to take messy action, and you may piss off some people, right? Because you're setting an expectation and you're not necessarily the expert at what you're trying to deliver yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, what's allowed me to get through those big moments and take those big leaps is I'm actually giving people more grace in my life. So as I give more grace, I say, you know what? There'll be a day where someone needs to give me grace.
Mm-hmm.
That this was the first time I launched this, and I tried really hard and I put everything into it that I possibly could. And maybe it didn't satisfy your specific needs at that point in time. let's talk about it, because relationships are important. And this isn't we're not butting heads, but let's talk through it. Like, I need that feedback because I do run businesses that I try to enhance on a daily basis. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the pain of regret is going to hurt much more than the pain of failure for me.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect in life. That's something I also realized over the last year. Progression over perfection.
And we have a cup at Iron Tribe that's progress over perfection is what they use there. And I always think about that as, some days just a little progress. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy as you go through. I love that. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little about real estate. You had a deal closing earlier. You got another one you're meeting with investors. If you were listening to the media, you would think that like no one's buying homes. It's horrible. The interest rates are high. There's no inventory. Jim, there's no reason to buy homes right now. I would love your take on it because I think we're very much aligned on this, but what you're talking to people about and how can we educate them with real information, right, and education so that they're not just listening to one outlet and going, I'm just going to wait.
Yeah. I think my overall statement on real estate is every person's situation is unique. So I don't like to make blanket statements because I do think there's a good time to buy for someone in this situation, and someone in this situation, it's a terrible time to buy. But for me, what I'm doing is $50K under asking, $20K under asking, $30K under asking, and the inventory is still so shrunk here locally that once more buyers come into the pool, those houses you're not getting anything at a discount. It's going to go back to the craziness, 25, 35, 50, 60. I mean, I bought something for a client, $180,000 over asking in 21. So for me, if you can financially afford it and you feel that you need a home, whether that's due to space, marriage, kids, you're moving out of state, I think it's a great time. I think at any point in time it will make sense because there's a need that fulfills something bigger than maybe paying a couple extra bucks on a monthly payment.
Yeah.
But the one I closed today, seller paid title, 20,000 under, all the repairs. They got a check for $3K back at closing.
Wow.
So the opportunities are there. It's just, do you understand that this is a good opportunity to take, or are you going to wait and think there's a better opportunity? And 9 out of 10, there's never a better opportunity in the future because real estate pricing has gone like this.
Yeah.
So for me, it's people who strategically understand, and it's people right now who are okay with taking a little bit of a risk that, the rate's a little high. But that risk is going to be taken at any point in time and at any year that you decide to purchase, because there will be one article or one channel that's always going to tell you it's a bad idea to buy a house, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then there's always that channel that says to do it. But I think it's really depending on the unique situation of what you're trying to accomplish at that point in time. And that's why my tagline for real estate is a plan for your future. What are you trying to do? If you're trying to buy a house right now in this neighborhood and you're only going to be in Nashville because you're trying to get a record deal and your plan is to sell this in a year, well, maybe it's not the right time because that neighborhood's not going to appreciate as much, and it's going to be a lot of progress to potentially make a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
But if you're here for 3 years, you should buy anything in Nashville right now because you're going to probably make money on it.
Yeah. Wow. The numbers even this year, right? I mean, what are we going to be, 6-7% appreciation and some of this? And I had a wise mentor tell me, he's like, Brian, it's never the ability of your timing to get in and out of the market. You're not going to be perfect with it. You're going to miss it by a little. He said, but your time in the market over many, many years is what makes it. And there was a book I read, David Bach, Automatic Millionaire Homeowner.
I love it.
Man, it was such a phenomenal book. And it just taught basically the premise of that education piece of buy the home and just stay in it. And he would always say, buy within your budget where you have a little bit of cushion there. And your point, buy it where that interest rate, whatever the interest rate is today, you can afford the home.
Yeah.
Find what's there. And then over time, obviously people know you could refinance, you could rent it out down the road. But he would just always talk about, you got to hold on to real estate to really get all of the extra benefits. I think people lose sight of that. It's like, well, it's only like right here, right today. What's the price? What's the rate? Yeah, those matter. But what do you think in 3 years, to your point, 5 years? Where will you be? What's
Everybody's always going to have an opinion on it. And I think at the end of the day, you purchase anything, you invest in anything, there's a level of risk. And what can you tolerate?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many people told me leading up to my event that COVID would come back and it would get canceled? Do you know how many of those people have ever thrown an event in their life? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would I listen to them, number one? And number two, that didn't even happen. Why would I put that in my brain and live in fear and potentially do something that I thought was the right decision because someone else advised me to do that? That's never lived in that situation, right? If you go through a lot of the conversations with my clients, specifically, people who are advising them have no knowledge of the market. People advising them don't even live in the state. People advising them haven't bought a house in 35 years. Mom or dad.
Yeah.
But that's not the expert. Why would you listen to the expert? And I tell people in the first discovery meeting of our conversation, go interview 2 other realtors. Please, I want you to. Like if you go meet with a realtor and they don't tell you that, then they don't actually believe that they can service you better than anybody else. And I know when I buy something, I want to feel that that person is the expert and will service me the best. So have some pride in what you do and go let there be healthy competition.
Yeah.
Because if you're really doing it the right way and you're really as good as you are, it should show through that. And every time they've gone, I've never lost. Like, I don't say that in a bragging way, right? And I've lost listings, don't get me wrong, but anytime I've said that to someone, they've come back because they realize that I will bet on myself 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm betting on myself so you can bet on yourself in your future.
Yeah. I love that. I hope people listening, I love that you said the unique approach, because everybody's, when they ask that question, it's like, it is so unique to who you are and where you are right now. Do you own other properties? Is it an investment property? What are you going to do with it? Like all these things, you go, let's not just look at this as one single transaction anymore. It's always my advice to people is when you take a holistic approach, and by the way, a holistic approach to all of your financial picture.
Yep.
Your auto loans, your student debt loans, hopefully you don't have them, but if you do, credit cards, all this, we go, how do we look at all of that and put you in a position to win and succeed?
Yep.
That's the goal. So people got to reach out to you for that. Dude, I've had so much fun. We could jam on, but this has been an incredible conversation. I love you opening up and sharing some of the journey, because I think people listening are going to gain insights into whatever they're going through, whether it's a mastermind they're created, a community they're created, selling real estate, whatever it is. Hopefully people will slow down, pause, and see themselves in that story. Go, you know what? I can do a few things different going into next year. I can design a life I really intentionally want to live.
Yep.
So last question. What have you learned last year or so? Maybe changed a belief or some lesson that you wish you had known before, but you're sharing with people is, man, this is something I've learned that has really helped me recently in 2023.
The most important relationship in your life should be the relationship with yourself. I really had to work on how I viewed myself, how I positioned myself, the credibility that I needed to give myself, that it was okay, I've made mistakes in the past. It's okay, I came from a family where parents were addicted to OxyContin. It's okay that I had the scholarship to go play baseball, but didn't because I was $5,000 short of a full ride, right? So I think that's the most important thing that I've learned. And, I was on Brad Lee's podcast and I was talking a lot about that because Brad actually, I heard it from Brad and Ed Milet like 6 years ago on a podcast, and it just didn't hit. And then I heard it again and it hit. And literally the next day, I was like, I need to develop a better relationship with myself. And I changed almost everything. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 14 months. I haven't smoked nicotine in 16 months. I'll smoke a cigar here and there, but I was like vaping daily, like addicted. So what I realized was I didn't care about myself. And then when you have a family and you're doing things for the right reason, where I want to show up at a maximum capacity for others, that helped me build that relationship back with myself. And then once I built that, I had clarity. And I believe that once you have clarity, it equates to confidence.
It's like the mic drop. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people resonate with that. I know in seasons of my life, it's like if you don't have a relationship with yourself, the person you talk to the most, and the thoughts coming in and out of your head, the rest of life gets really hard.
It does.
But when you change it, like you said, and start eliminating some of those things that you know are not healthy and they don't serve you, it's a whole other life plan.
Totally.
So, dude, thank you. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Ooh, man. Okay, we closed out strong. Guys, you're going to rewind back to the beginning, but that end was strong. So this is one of those opportunities for you. Anything you've heard today, I would encourage you to write something down that you're going to take action on. And I don't say that very often because I want you to pause and think about things. But today, there are some things that you can actually write down that I want you to commit to yourself. You may even go so far as what Jim said is publicly announce it to people if you want some extra accountability. You learned that today. But move into a posture that you're going to actually attack and move forward into 2024 and make it your best year ever. I actually believe you can do that. Ed talks about one decision, one person, one choice away from making it a better life. And you've heard some of that today as Jim's poured into us. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, listening, like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Let us know how today has impacted you. Share it with your friends. Share it with other people that need to hear this story. That's how we make the world a better place. And you heard that from Jim earlier about community and the power of what we do. Make sure you go out there and do something great. Serve other people. That's usually the best way to actually show up and be your authentic self. So we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode.